a lake, a large lake, and then, incredibly, they found a number of skeletons. And these skeletons were like 7-foot-tall people. They had long red hair. They dragged like a dozen of these skeletons out of the cave. This all was around the turn of the century. Get this, George. There are 2 museums in Nevada today, one in Lovelock, one in Winnemucca. Those museums are wholly dedicated to the finds that were found in the Lovelock Cave. The excavations were done by the University of California at Berkeley. Actually did the excavations. They know that these things came out of these caves. People at the museum talked about a photo of a rancher standing on a crate holding one of these giants by the hair. And, I mean, this thing is huge. And, 7 feet tall, that is a large person with red hair.
Right, and at that time, that was really a giant.
And here's the thing. That photo of that giant, every single one of these giant skeletons is utterly missing. No one knows not only where the skeletons are, they don't even know where photos of them are. Okay? There's 2 museums in Nevada that are all about these discoveries. So here you have a double enigma and then a triple one where there's apparently some kind of cover-up, and these rather unusual items have just vanished. But you have these giants. They had red hair. They sound like Vikings or something like that, actually. And on top of that, they apparently were going by boat up into, the Black Rock Desert of Nevada. How about that? So as I chronicled all that, apparently California has been drying up for several thousand years. These lakes have been drying up. There used to be, in the 1800s, there was a big lake around Fresno called Tulare Lake. That lake is not there today. But there used to be big sailing ships and stuff like that on that lake in the mid-1800s.
Sounds like we're going the way of Mars, David.
Well, I mean, that is what is happening to this planet, and places like Chad, Lake Chad, they've been saying now, which is in the kind of southern Sahara. That lake has been drying up now for the last 50 years. It's only about a quarter of what it used to be.
Jeez.
And, it's fine that people should be concerned about the planet drying up and certain lakes going, but throughout history, this is what's been going on. And in California and this area, there used to be all these lakes, the Salton Sea. In my book on Lost Cities of North and Central America, I have a couple of chapters where I talk about weird ships out in the desert. And these are mainly around Southern California. Some of them as
right in the middle of the desert, right?
Yeah, ships out in the desert. That's right. And there's a number of stories along those lines. They know that some of these occurred. A similar thing like this there was another lake also around Baker, California, and along the Death Valley is very much like this. But back in the late 1800s, this lake still existed, and it was a long lake, and they still ran a paddle steamer on it. And one winter, this paddle steamer was taking a load of gold from some mines in Nevada. It sank in a storm on the lake and was gone. That lake then dried up over the next 40 years. And then in the 1930s, one of the early California aviators went out flying over the Southern California desert, and lo and behold, he sees like a riverboat steamer with a paddle wheel out in the desert, covered with, partially covered with sand. And that's how they discovered that ship, and it had a lost gold. This was 1928 or something.
That is, all right, so let's assume they were able to boat their way up. Why keep it a secret, David? If the Smithsonian confiscated all these artifacts, mummies and tablets and things like that, why keep it a secret?
Well, there's a number of reasons for that. Part of it is, and it's the same reason why a lot of things today would be kept a secret. They're engineering history, and today history is politically correct. It's not necessarily what really happened in the past. It's more like what they want to have happened, or how politically correct they want, certain natives to be, or something like that. Another problem, particularly out west, was the Mormons. And of all the states in the United States, you've got the universities basically teaching isolationism. That is, certainly Egyptians didn't come to North America or South America. They didn't travel. Chinese people didn't get in boats and go places. All the Native Americans walked from Siberia down through Canada, down to South America. But in Utah, they don't teach that. And the Mormon religion, which is, pretty interesting in itself. I'm not a Mormon, but I grew up in Colorado, so I've spent a lot of time around Utah and Mormons, and I'm quite familiar with their history. They claim that, the Egyptians and lost tribes of Israel, that they escaped from the Middle East. They got into boats, they crossed the Mediterranean, then crossed the Atlantic, they landed in Mexico. These were the Nephites and the Jaredites. They then fought all these battles. You can add to that, as far as I'm concerned, Chinese coming here, Egyptians, Polynesians. You've got Basque sailors and even African kingdoms and stuff like that. But so here is a problem with, say, the Smithsonian and mainstream history, is that suddenly a find like this, that the Egyptians would say were in the Grand Canyon, say that Romans came to Arizona. I go into this in my book as well. That is basically major ammunition for the Mormons. This is what they've been saying. They're saying, this is what the Book of Mormon says. Mm-hmm. It says people crossed the ocean. It says Romans came here and Jews came here and stuff. And, see, Book of Mormon must be right. And so the Smithsonian and other powers that be, they're not wanting to give credence to the Book of Mormon, which these finds, would kind of do. And, as an archaeologist, I read all kinds of archaeology books and history books, total fringe, far out books, similar to the ones I write. And mainstream of all kinds, and the skeptical books, I read them all. And the Mormon archaeology books are quite interesting. And so these are sort of reasons why they want to have cover-ups. A similar thing happened in Brazil, let me tell you, just to show you how these things become politically correct or incorrect. Back in the 70s, the Brazilian Navy went out and they discovered there was a Roman shipwreck off of Rio de Janeiro. And it was underwater. The Navy went down diving on it. They found actually several boats. They started bringing up Roman amphora and Roman coins and stuff like that. America's most famous underwater archaeologist, a guy named Robert Marks.
Let's talk a little bit more about that, David, when we come back. Then we'll also get into the Olmecs. Who were the Olmecs? We'll be back. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie, David Hatcher-Childress. David, did you want to finish your last thoughts before we move into the Olmecs at all?
Well, we were talking about how the Brazilian Navy had discovered these Roman shipwrecks off of Rio de Janeiro. But what happened in the end there, with this exciting archaeological discovery, was it became politicized, and that suddenly the Italian community in Brazil were saying, oh, well, hey, Romans discovered Brazil, in fact, and in fact they should all get, citizenship or whatever. And so what happened was the Brazilian government ordered the Navy to go out there, and they buried these Roman shipwrecks rather than excavate them. So that's how kind of things become politicized. I thought it was interesting, also, your commercial about gold, and we were talking about how the Egyptians and King Solomon and these guys, they went around the world looking for gold. Gold is indestructible. All the gold of ancient times still exists today. To the ancient peoples, including the Egyptians and the Olmecs, the ancient Israelis, it was gold. It was what really mattered to them. They were also searching for jade was very valuable to them, exotic feathers.
If Zechariah Sitchin's right, the Anunnaki came here for gold as well.
That's right. That is part of, his whole cosmology, that the Anunnaki came to our planet